Welcome. We are so glad to have you join Gunnar and me for Still Learning, the Come Follow Me podcast. Today we're in Doctrine and Covenants 125 to 128. And Gunnar, we're still in the middle of hard history for the saints.
Well, I'm not so sure that we ever get out of hard history as we go through Doctrine and Covenants, but it's totally inspirational when we see the faith that persevered and how they, as we discussed last week, how they were able to prove themselves to themselves as disciples of Jesus Christ and embracers of the restoration.
Yeah.
So we're here now in D&C 125 through 128, which takes us from March 1841 to September of 1842. Just as a quick reminder, we ended last week in January of 1841, so not much time has gone by until we land here in March of 1841. So if I could just real quickly hit some of the high points that happened during this time. So we're starting to enter the era of plural marriage, but it is not out in the open yet. It's not fully embraced. We haven't received the doctrine of the new and everlasting covenant of marriage.
We'll talk about that next week.
Which we get that in 1843. But what does happen is here early in 1841, Joseph is visited by an angel with a drawn sword. And this angel tells him that he is commanded to institute plural marriage. And if he doesn't, the Lord will have his life and will raise up another prophet who will do this. Now, Joseph, some years earlier, he had been visited by an angel, and this would have been in 1834. So he's visited by an angel and told that he needs to start practicing plural marriage. And he hems and haws and balks, and there's no revelation about it. I
think when you say there's no revelation, what I'm hearing is there's no recorded revelation, right? Because an angel coming and saying,
well, I guess
do this.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that an angel came, but Christ didn't say, you must do this, thus saith the Lord, blah, 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 blah. I don't know if I'm being nitpicky, if that's a nuance.
Okay.
Yeah. But the point is that he was told in 1834 to start practicing plural marriage, but he wasn't told what plural marriage was. That's kind of that's what I'm saying. So he ends up marrying a lady.
Fanny Algers?
Yeah. So he marries Fanny Algers, but it's just a civil marriage. And it's a marriage for time. It's just a second wife.
Right.
Just a second wife. But my point is that it's not for eternity. It's not the celestial. Right. It's not an ordinance. Right. It's not, performed by one holding authority, by somebody who has sealing keys. None of that exists. So he's just, okay, I guess this is what the angel is telling me to do, so I go and I do it. That didn't go anywhere and ended pretty much right after it started. But now in 1841, he's visited and he's told he needs to start doing these marriages for eternity, marriage for time and eternity. So that's early in 1841. By April, some sources say it was April, some say it was possibly May, but this one is recorded. He marries Louisa Beeman, whose family was longtime members of the church and supporters of Joseph Smith. She was considered very faithful, a woman who was discreet, could keep a secret, and he marries her for time and eternity. So this is the first time and eternity marriage that we're aware of. Then on August 7th, Don Carlos, his youngest brother, dies of tuberculosis, 25 years old. 8 days later, his 14-month-old son, by the same name, also named Don Carlos, dies of malaria. So the saints moved to Commerce, later named Nauvoo, in the early months of 1839. And so here we are 2 years later, and they're still dealing with the swamp. Malaria is still fairly rampant. And everybody in Joseph Smith's household got malaria at some point in time during this 2-year period. Then we have in February of 1842, Emma gives birth to Thomas, and he's stillborn. So that would be her 6th child that she had lost.
And this is 10 months after the loss of her previous baby.
Yeah, so it's like 6 months. Yeah. But also, the other thing that makes me grab my heart is when she lost Don Carlos, she was pregnant with Thomas. But then March 17th, 6 weeks later, after Thomas is still born, the Relief Society is formally organized. At that point, it was called the Nauvoo Female Relief Society, and Emma is the president. Then on May 6th, there's an attempted assassination on former Governor Lilburn Boggs of Missouri, and he's shot through the window while he's reading with some buckshot that gets his face, his neck. It causes a lot of bleeding, and they think it's terminal. They think he's going to die, but he doesn't. He survives. Governor Boggs goes on record saying that was Joseph Smith and Porter Rockwell trying to make this thing happen, that they are guilty before the fact.
Well, and of course, because we've got a vested interest in killing Joseph Smith, so let's take advantage of this opportunity.
So that's May 6th. We'll get into more detail on this stuff as we get to D&C 127, which takes us into September of 1842. So there's a lot going on in their lives, and it's a stressful time, and it doesn't let up. Things do not get less stressful from here to Joseph's martyrdom and beyond for the saints. So it's in that context that then we find ourselves in D&C 125. So we're in March 1841. He has probably seen the angel with the drawn sword by this point in time. We don't have a precise date on that. But this is before he marries Louisa Beeman.
And so the saints during this period of time, the saints are still reclaiming Nauvoo and also building up cities round about.
Right. So that's where this revelation comes, and the Lord is saying, hey, we need to spread out a little bit. That's my reading of this. And like so many of the D&C, and we've pointed this out in the past, it starts with a question. Joseph asks, what is the will of the Lord concerning the saints in the territory of Iowa? So Iowa is just on the other side of the Mississippi River from Nauvoo. And when the saints fled Missouri, they end up kind of spread out.
Right.
A number end up in Montrose, which is exactly across the river from Nauvoo. Right. A number end up in Commerce, which became Nauvoo, but it's a swamp. So they end up in Quincy, Illinois. They end up in some of the outlying areas. And so Joseph's asking this question now. What do you want to do with the saints in Iowa? And I like the way it starts because there's something here that seems really relevant to us. In verse 2, the Lord says, verily thus saith the Lord, I say unto you, if those who call themselves by my name and are essaying to be my saints, if they will do my will and keep my commandments concerning them, let them gather themselves together unto the places which I shall appoint unto them by my servant Joseph, and build up cities unto my name, that they may be prepared for that which is in store for a time to come. This word of saying is just not a word that is mine. It's not a word I find myself saying.
Yeah.
And so in looking it up, there are a few interpretations that all seem to point to the term trying to, or taking action to be. So for those who call themselves by my name and are trying to be my saints, if they will do my will, keep my commandments, etc. There's also some interpretation of that word that says in the 19th century, it also had this connotation of making a show of being or of pretending to be. Leaves me with the impression of people who maybe are not all in, but trying to look like they are, right? And that's where I get to this thought that, man, I feel like a lot of us kind of fall into that, or we certainly fall into it from time to time. We probably all of us at a time or another, we're going through the motions, but aren't really there. And I remind myself just how totally exciting the restoration is. The restoration is an unbelievable thing. It's so unbelievable that most of the world don't believe it, right?
Right.
Yeah. Right. I remember President Hinckley speaking at a conference saying, this is either the most amazing thing after the resurrection, this is the most amazing thing that has ever happened in the history of the planet, or it's a complete farce. It's one or the other. There's nothing in the middle. And talking to my son, he says, there's no downside to believing. If it's true, you're a faithful member, you live the doctrine, right? If it's true, ultimately you receive exaltation, celestial glory, all of this. But if it's not true, you live a life free of addictions. You live a life of service and getting that confirming feeling of goodness, right?
Right.
You live a life where your family is tight. There's such a focus on family and love for each other. And he says, Dad, I just fail to see the downside of being a member.
Spoken as one who values things of eternal value as opposed to things of temporal convenience or even comfort.
Yeah.
I think that says a lot about what your son values, that he cannot see the downside. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. So I said, even if his faith wavers from time to time, he still recognizes the benefits of being a member.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's beautiful. And I love that you brought up that thing about those who call themselves by my name and are essaying to be my saints. Because it is a process. We are all trying, and maybe sometimes our trying is more sincere than other times.
Yeah.
But it's a process. And the Lord is saying, I'll work with you.
Yeah, that's a really great point, because no matter what interpretation you take, the most generous one is to say, I'm trying, right? So call themselves by name and are trying to be my saints. Mm-hmm. I think it's very telling that he doesn't say, and who are my saints, right? Who call themselves by my name, and it's the people who are trying, not the people who are, right? He recognizes that. And then if you think about the temple recommend questions, a few years ago, they changed it. They changed the language to say striving this way, striving that way. And I think that was a wonderful, wonderful change and a beautiful acknowledgement that we're not all there, right?
Isn't it beautiful that the Lord invites us to call ourselves by his name, even before we are worthy of it, even while we're still seeking. We make that baptismal covenant as that's when we walk through the gates of the path, right? And it's aspirational.
Well, this whole calling him by my name, I think we could probably talk a long time about that. I think it was Dallin H. Oakes now President Dallin H. Oaks, in his first general conference. It was his first or second general conference address. It was 84, 85. He gives us a talk about being called by his name, what that means. And it's this incredibly rich doctrine. He really gets into the meat. That's some deep doctrine. He covers the light stuff, which is what we normally talk about. But then he gets into some deep things in there. But what I wanted to say was, I remember, my boys probably don't remember, but I remember talking to them right about the time that they were in high school. And my father was living with us at the time, and he was in his 80s. And I remember telling them, listen, you watch what you do, and you watch who you associate with and what you get involved in, if for no other reason, because you have my name. And whatever you do either makes me look good or look bad, right? You're not just besmirching your name, you're besmirching my name and my Father's name. The two of us have worked really hard to give you a good name. The name that we gave you doesn't carry with it anything that you need to be embarrassed about, right? Because we were diligent in how we handled that name. And when I think about that in terms of taking on the name of Christ, he set the bar pretty high.
Really?
But what I want to say is that one of our responsibilities is to not cause people to disparage his name through our actions. I think that's part of taking on his name.
Yeah.
Knowing that we're going to make mistakes.
And that we will make mistakes, and repenting is one of the ways that we bring honor to his name.
Right.
Because when people can see that we truly changed, that we truly trust the Lord enough to change, it gives them hope too. Well, at that time, we've got the saints who are in Illinois, the saints in Iowa, building up a space. And our next section is where Brigham Young has just returned from a 2-year mission to England.
Right. So 126.
Yeah. And I'm not sure at what point in there his wife, Mary Ann, moved from across the Missouri. From across the Mississippi. I'm not sure what time she moved from that area into Nauvoo. But when I read about the life that Mary was living, the way that she was serving, well, Brigham was on his mission. We've read many, many times, or I've grown up hearing about how Brigham, as he left on that mission to England, that he was stricken with malaria. He and Heber C. Kimball, and they just barely, they left on the day that was appointed, and all they did was get out of town. That was all they could manage because they were so sick. But they stood up in a cart and called, "Hurrah, hurrah for Israel." What I was not aware of was that Mary Ann, his wife, who he married when his first wife passed away, and she inherited an instant family of 2 little girls, and then they've had 3 children together. And she has now just given birth. And they are sick. They are sick. And they don't have a proper place to live.
Can we pull that thread just a little bit? Do you know what it means to not have a proper place to live?
Well, I know that later on she's in a horse stable, but I'm not sure where she is right now.
She's in a horse stable. Brigham Young leaves to go on his mission with his wife in a horse stable, his wife and kids living in a horse stable in Montrose, the other side of the Mississippi River.
And she doesn't even have the food to care for her family, and she's hungry. And like 2 months after he leaves, she rows a boat across the storming Mississippi River with her baby in her arms to get a few potatoes from a friend. And she never complains.
Yeah. And she would make that trip to get flour, because she'd have to put the flour in the milk to make something of more substance for her kids to eat. Because they're, like you said, they were starving.
Yeah. And then finally she gets a plot of land in Nauvoo and a garden that she takes care of, and she has to roll across the river to take care of the garden. And then finally she starts to build a house, but she's a mom. Okay, I just got back from Utah, where I got to spend some time with my daughter and my son-in-law and my 2 grandchildren down there. And one of them is 3.5, and the other one is 1. And they're very active, and they require care around the clock. I remember those days. I remember that feeling of, will I ever have time for anything?
Yeah,
In addition.
But I think also back in those days, it took a community, right?
Yes, yes.
I mean, when I think back on my childhood, I mean, the sun went up, I went out the door. The rule was be home when the street lights come on. My parents had no idea where I was. All right. And I'm talking.
It's not how we do things now. Yeah.
I'm like 7 years old. Right. We were a bunch of rodents. We were just going everywhere. You know, I'm just saying that's the way it was. That's the way life was. I think we had slightly shorter leashes on our kids when they were growing up, but there are very short leashes on kids now.
Yeah.
Then you dial the clock back to Jesus, and he's 12 years old.
12 years old and
the family's 2 days into their trip back to Nazareth. They're like, where's Jesus? I thought you had him. I thought he was with so-and-so. Nobody's got Jesus. They hadn't seen Jesus for 2 days and didn't know it and didn't think to be worried about it. I'm just saying those kids were probably all over the place. All right.
I bet you the 2-year-old is still like kind of close.
I don't doubt it, but the parents, I think it's fair to say that parents were not doting over their children the way we dote over them. But your point is still well taken. She's got 5 kids.
Well, now it's 6.
Okay.
Because of the newborn, yeah. So she's got 6 kids, and she's trying to build a house. And she has blankets for windows and doors. Mm-hmm. And she's a little bit embarrassed as Brigham is coming home that she doesn't have something better to receive him in.
Yeah.
But he did leave her in a horse stable.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And it's my understanding that she didn't build this place by herself, right? I mean, and in my mind, I'm imagining the ministering brothers were trying to help, right? But the point is, he's gone for 2 years. And when he comes back, she's living in this small cabin without windows and without a door, not complaining. And Brigham Young,
it's not chinked. Like it's not keeping out the weather very well.
That's right. Well, if you've ever been to Nauvoo, that wind blows really strong off the Mississippi. It gets really cold. When it's cold, it's really cold because that wind is blowing 30, 40 miles an hour. It's strong. Brigham comes back and he's really upset at the situation that his wife is living in. He's been gone, like I said, he's been gone for 2 years and she still doesn't have windows or a door, proper place to live.
I just think that I really love how here at last the Lord receives their offering, Brigham's and Mary Ann's. And he says, I command you to send my word abroad and take a special care of your family from this time henceforth and forever. Amen. I'm just like rejoicing with Mary Ann that I'm rejoicing, but I'm also just so touched as I read the incredible sacrifice, the hardship that the early saints went through all the time. It's just, there's so many such stories. And in the midst of all of this, there's the rejoicing, but we're going to get to that in just a few minutes. It's just really touched my heart.
She was such a sweet lady. It's as though she thought nothing of it. You know, it was fine. And she was grateful for what she had. And I think about Brigham Young now. You know, he's thinking everything's fine with his wife, and he comes to see how she's living. Right? He almost immediately starts building her a brick house and builds her a really nice brick house. but he sees how she's living. And I think, man, how many of us have left the church over less than that? Mm-hmm. You know?
It occurs to me as you talk about that, when Brigham is leading the saints out of Nauvoo, he is so careful to have them covenant to make sure that the poor and the widows and everybody are brought along, that nobody is left behind. I wonder if this experience is part of that preparation.
Yeah, he was a methodical planner.
I grew up in a family where my dad was gone a lot. And he found ways to make time for us, and I'm so grateful. And I just love the memories of my dad singing to me at night. I do not want to in any way suggest that righteous fathers are not needed in the home, because they are. That should not be the priority, because it is. And there are times when the Lord makes a command that calls upon us to make extraordinary sacrifices. And there are times when the Lord says, okay, take care of your family. The Relief Society is established around this time with the call to the sisters to live up to our privileges. We want to have husbands who are men of God, and that means we get to be women who are women of God. And I love the way that when Joseph organized the Relief Society, he said to the sisters, it's that famous quote, "You are now placed in a situation where you can act according to those sympathies which God has planted in your bosoms. If you live up to these principles, how great and glorious. If you live up to your privilege, the angels cannot be restrained from being your associates." It's just really, in the midst of all of this mundane, hard work, there's this elevated vision of communion with heaven, of being associates with the angels, of being able to go forward and do the work of God with godly power. And that is part of the restoration. And it still is our invitation today.
Yeah, and Joseph empowered the Relief Society and gave a lot of authority to Emma that was contrary to social tradition, societal norms of the day. He was very progressive. I say he was progressive, but he was following what the Lord was telling him to do.
Eternal progression.
Yeah, so you've kind of taken us to 127, right? Can we go on 27?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So in September 1st, 1842, let me give it a little background here. By September 1st, Joseph is in hiding. And on May 6th, 1842, former Governor Boggs is shot while reading at home. We talked a little bit about this. There's excessive bleeding, and he almost dies. And on July 20th, he signs an affidavit accusing Joseph Smith and Porter Rockwell of being accessories before the fact. So Governor Thomas Reynolds of Missouri signs a formal requisition to the governor of Illinois, whose name is Thomas Carlin at the time, demanding extradition of Joseph and Porter Rockwell.
I just want to point out the hypocrisy here of, I am a governor who passed a law saying it was legal for anybody to kill these men. Now, somebody shot at me, and I assume it must have been those men. So now I'm going to get them brought back to Missouri where it's legal to kill them.
Yeah, I mean, and he does get Rockwell back there. Rockwell is in jail for a year. They have a trial. They find no evidence, and they clear him. And he comes back to Nauvoo. So even when they get their hands on him, they can't prove anything. Whoever it was never found or charged. And I don't know who it was. There's no history that suggests with any kind of affirmation who it was. who did this. But now on August 8th, 1842, so this is a month before D&C 127, Governor Carlin issues an arrest warrant for Joseph and Porter Rockwell. It's carried out a few days later. Joseph is arrested, and there's a quick hearing in Nauvoo, and he's released by the Nauvoo Municipal Court. This goes back to the Nauvoo Charter, the Nauvoo City Charter, and the fact that Nauvoo had its own its own court system, can make its own laws, and so he was able to get the arrest warrant thrown out. He goes into hiding almost immediately because he knows that's not the end of it. He receives word 4 days later or so that there are Missouri officers on their way to seize him forcibly and take him back to Missouri. We're in the middle of August, 2 weeks before this epistle. He's going from house to house. They've got safe houses all throughout Nauvoo and across the river in Montrose. And so he's going to these safe houses trying to avoid these people who are trying to arrest him. Eventually, sometime in early September, but we don't know what date, everybody gave up trying to capture Joseph and arrest him, and he was able to come out of hiding. But when D&C 127 and 128 were written, he was still in hiding. And you see there's a reference to it right here at the end of 127, where in verse 11, Joseph says, "I now close my letter for the present for the want of more time, for the enemy is on the alert." When he's talking about the enemy is on the alert and he doesn't have time, he's running from these guys.
Right.
So is there anything you want to point out?
I just love a couple things about this. One is, in the midst of all of this, in verse 3, "Let all the saints rejoice, therefore, and be exceedingly glad, for Israel's God is their God. And he will mete out a just recompense of reward upon the heads of all their oppressors." We can trust in God for our defense. Is just this beautiful promise. And let us rejoice in the midst of this time when he's running and hiding. And then the other thing that I love about this is, you would think that at a time like this, your mind might be occupied with like more mundane things. How do I hide from the oppressors? Why are these people so unjust towards me? Why, all sorts of things. Joseph has so much trauma, and it would be so easy to focus on the trauma. But instead, he invites us to rejoice, and he's focused on the work of the temple and talking about the baptisms for the dead. And this is a time when the endowment hasn't been revealed yet. So there's all the work for the dead. And just this joy that the saints experienced at the reality that their parents and their grandparents and their aunts and their uncles and their brothers and all these people who they loved so much, who had not had the opportunity to hear the gospel, none of them were lost, and they could do this work for their beloved family members. It's just so beautiful to watch.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the saints were so excited, and they were baptizing right and left. They weren't writing anything down. Emma got baptized for her father. So there was just no precedent yet, right? Yeah. And so he had to write this down, and he says, verse 6, "Thus saith the Lord unto you concerning your dead, when any of you are baptized for your dead, let there be a recorder." There be a recorder, and let him be an eyewitness of your baptisms. Let him hear with his ears, that he may testify the truth, saith the Lord, and then that things that are bound on earth can be bound in heaven, etc. He elaborates even more on it in the next chapter.
Yeah. And I love that elaboration in the next chapter, because there's something there that I had never understood before. He talks about the book of life being opened and the dead being judged out of those things which were written in the books. And I've tried to understand that. And I have assumed that we would be judged out of the things which were written in the books on earth, which kind of distressed me a little bit, because we're not very reliable narrators in our own journals in anything. How do we get judged by the things how are we judged in heaven by the things that are written in the records on earth? But here he states that what actually happens is the book of life is kept in heaven. 128 verse 7. It says, another book was opened, which was the book of life, but the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books, according to their works. Consequently, the books spoken of must be the books which contained the record of their works, and refer to the records which are kept on the earth. And the book which was the book of life is the record which is kept in heaven. The principle agreeing precisely with the doctrine which is commanded you in the revelation, contained in the letter which I wrote to you previous to my leaving my place, that in all your recordings it may be recorded in heaven. And now the nature of this ordinance consists in the power of the priesthood, by the revelation of Jesus Christ, wherein it is granted that whatsoever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Or in other words, taking a different view of the translation, whatsoever you record on earth shall be recorded in heaven. And whatsoever you do not record on earth shall not be recorded in heaven. For out of the book shall your dead be judged. In the temple, we are able to witness baptisms without the priesthood. A young priest is able to perform the baptisms without the Melchizedek priesthood. There are many things involved in baptism. So priests can perform the ordinance of baptism in the temple for the dead. But the person who does the recording must hold the Melchizedek priesthood, because it is a priesthood function that causes the recording on earth to be recorded in heaven. That's just very interesting to me.
I don't know why it is that way.
Yeah.
Something about it feels right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I like in verse 9 where he says, it may seem to some to be a very bold doctrine that we talk of, a power which records or binds on earth and binds in heaven. And then he goes on, nevertheless, in all the ages of the world. And I just love lines like that that make me feel like I'm talking to Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
I feel like he didn't need to say that. He could have just gone in all the ages of the world, blah, 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 blah. But he acknowledges that, yeah, this is bold, right? I got it.
Yeah.
But this is the way it is. So. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, and so what causes me to feel like I'm talking to Joseph Smith, I just love how poetic he gets here. Mm-hmm. After he's talked about all of the difficulties that they're dealing with right now. In the previous chapter, Joseph says, but nevertheless, deep water is what I am wont to swim in. It has all become a second nature to me. And I feel like Paul to glory and tribulation, for to this day has the God of my fathers delivered me out of them all, and will deliver me from henceforth. For behold, and lo, I shall triumph over all my enemies, for the Lord God hath spoken it. And then now in verse 128 at the very end, I just, considering all that they're going through and how difficult life is. In 22, and he says, brethren, shall we not go on in so great a cause? Go forward and not backward. Courage, brethren, and on to the victory. Let your hearts rejoice and be exceedingly glad. Let the earth break forth into singing. Let the dead speak forth anthems of eternal praise to the King Emmanuel, who hath ordained before the world was that which would enable us to redeem them out of their prison. For the prisoners shall go free. Let the mountains shout for joy, and all ye valleys cry aloud, and all ye seas and dry lands tell the wonders of your eternal King. And the rivers and brooks and rills flow down with gladness. Let the woods and all the trees of the field praise the Lord, and ye solid rocks leap for joy. And let the sun, moon, and the morning stars sing together. And let all the sons of God shout for joy. And let the eternal creations declare his name forever and ever. And again I say, how glorious is the voice we hear from heaven, proclaiming in our ears glory and salvation and honor and immortality and eternal life, kingdoms, principalities, and powers. It's just, wow. President Nelson talked to us about Pink Celestial, right? Wow, this is think, Celestial, this is just take your mind off of the pain that you experience right now, of the trauma that we have all experienced. Lift your eyes towards the heavens and see what cause we have to rejoice. And I really believe that when we do that, that equips us with the power to face whatever comes. It is that act of gratitude that allows us to be buoyed up and carried and take it all and come out conquer.
So you've taken us from 22 to 23. Let me continue into 24. And then we can connect it all together. Let me start at the end of 23 and then roll into 24. So, and again, I say, how glorious is the voice we hear from heaven proclaiming in our ears glory and salvation and honor and immortality and eternal life, kingdoms, principalities, and powers. Then into 24, behold, the great day of the Lord is at hand, and who can abide the day of his coming? And who can stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like fuller's soap. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver, and he shall purify the sons of Levi. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to do a little dissection, and then we're going to continue. All right, sons of Levi. Who shall purify the sons of Levi? Where is this coming from? Right? Who are the sons of Levi? If we go and look at Doctrine and Covenants 84, it reads, the sons of Moses and Aaron shall be filled with the glory of the Lord upon Mount Zion, in the Lord's house. Whose sons are ye? So we are the sons of Moses and Aaron. Levi was the great-grandfather of Moses and Aaron. So through this process, as sons of Moses and Aaron, we become sons of Levi also, right? Mm-hmm. So sons of Levi are us. Let me just finish with this. Upon Mount Zion in the Lord's house, whose sons are ye, and also many whom I have called and sent forth to build up my church. For whoso is faithful unto the obtaining these two priesthoods of which I have spoken, that's the Aaronic and Melchizedek priesthood, and the magnifying their calling, are sanctified by the Spirit unto the renewing of their bodies, they become the sons of Moses and Aaron, and the seed of Abraham, and the church and kingdom of the elect of God. So, by participating worthily in the ordinances of the priesthood, we are adopted into the family of Moses and Aaron, and therefore Levi. So going back in verse 24, he's like refiner's fire, fuller's soap. He shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver, and shall purify the sons of Levi. So the Lord's going to purify us, okay, and purge them as gold and silver. So he's going to purge us as gold and silver are purged. So let's talk a little bit about the refining process of silver. So in preparation, the refiner would have to place the silver ore, in other words, the impure silver, in a crucible, a heat-resistant pot, and set it inside a small furnace. It's a slow heating process. The temperature is raised gradually. If the fire becomes too hot too quickly, the metal could spatter, it could crack the crucible or allow valuable silver to oxidize or vaporize and destroy the silver. So the gradual increase ensures this uniform heat and separation of impurities. I think about us being purified through the refiner's fire. It's a great metaphor of how the Lord is constantly raising the bar. We get heated, and we've now survived and come through that. We get heated a little bit more and a little bit more, and it's a slow process. It's not all of a sudden. The heating can take up to an hour before it reaches the right temperature, which is around 1,700 to 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, almost 1,000 degrees Celsius. Now, as the silver is melted, impurities called dross, right, bits of lead, copper, slag, etc., they rise to the surface. And the refiner repeatedly skims off the dross with an iron rod, sometimes blowing on it reheating, skimming again, taking off the dross, taking off the dross. And how does the refiner know that the silver is pure? How does he know he's taken all the impurities out?
Tell me.
He knows it when the surface of the silver becomes so smooth, it becomes like a mirror, and the refiner can see his face in the silver.
Have you received his image in your countenance?
Yeah. It's a beautiful metaphor.
Wow.
Then we go to the next line. So we say, and purge them of gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. Where have we heard that phrase before? This offering in righteousness. We're talking about sons of Levi, offerings in righteousness. You have to go all the way back to D&C 13:1. Upon you, my fellow servants, in the name of Messiah, I confer the priesthood of Aaron, which holds the keys of the ministering of angels and of the gospel of repentance, and of baptism by immersion for the remission of sins. And this shall never be taken again from the earth until the sons of Levi do offer again an offering unto the Lord in righteousness. For the longest time, I just didn't understand what that meant. Who are these sons of Levi? Okay, well, we know who they are now. Make an offering to the Lord in righteousness. Well, we know that we've just come through this verse that we know that once they go through this purification process, they can make an offering in righteousness. But what is this offering? What is this offering that we're to make to the Lord in righteousness? And it gets answered here at the end. Let us therefore, as a church and a people, and as Latter-day Saints, offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. And let us present in his holy temple, when it is finished, a book containing the records of our dead, which shall be worthy of all acceptation. The offering in righteousness spoken about in chapter 13 is the work that we do for the dead in the temple. It's one of the things, this connection is one of the things that just so strengthens my testimony. In 1829, when Joseph received the Aaronic priesthood with Oliver Cowdery, he had no idea what this Levi offering to the Lord in righteousness, he had no idea what that meant. He had no idea about temples. He had no idea. And then here we are in 1842, 13 years later, the dots are being connected. And I think it's beautiful. I think it's amazing. And I also think Oliver and Joseph chose not to worry about it. This is what the Lord said. I don't understand it. I'm writing it down. I know I'm quoting Malachi, but it still doesn't mean I understand it. I'm writing it down. There it is. And it comes full circle. I think it's beautiful.
Well, I love it. And it says something about the purifying power of temple worship, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I had a really beautiful conversation, actually a reaching and a going through a bunch of difficult things conversation with a dear friend this week. And she asked me, I shared some of the hardest parts of my history and times when I consented to being a slave. And she said, how did you get from there to where you are today? And there were a few things that came to me. And one was, one of the huge changes that happened in my life was I started working at the temple. I actually got a job as a janitor at the temple. And somehow there was this massive transition in my confidence and my power to have courage just by spending the time in the temple. I still don't entirely understand that. It was just incredibly grounding for me. So there was that. Another thing that happened was I started reviewing my temple covenants silently every morning and night. Changed my life. And another thing was I started keeping a gratitude journal, writing down 10 things a day that I was grateful for. And I feel like all of those things are right here in this that we're just studying right now, right? It is the power. I don't know why, but there is power in temple worship. And there is power in gratitude in the midst of everything is hard and difficult. The Lord meets us there in the temple and in our grateful hearts. I just really want in my hard times to remember that power and access it. And that's why I wrote the song we're doing today, which I feel like it's partly about Joseph, and it's partly about Emma, and it's partly about Mary Ann and Brigham.
I love how your songs take the doctrine and make it personal. And I love it. I love how you connect those dots. And it's a beautiful song. It's beautiful lyrics. I can't wait for us to share it with everybody. Can we do that now?
Let's do it.
When the water is deep and I can't see the shore, the cupboards are bare and the wolves at the door. I've given my all and I'm called to give more. I will thank thee, I will thank thee. For here I am trusted in so great a cause. Let the rocks and the rivers burst forth in applause. Let fallen creation all glory in God's loving kindness, endless mercy. I'll rise from the depths and I'll shake off my shame. My dreams may be shattered, I'll praise just the same. Omnipotent love is the whole of thy name, and I trust thee. No matter how heavy the weight that I bear, accused by my friends or bereft of their care. If I dig in the depths and I find nothing there, still I thank thee, ever thank thee. For here I am trusted in so great a cause. Let the rocks and the rivers burst forth in applause. Let fallen creation all glory in God's loving kindness, endless mercy. I'll rise from the depths and I'll shake off my shame. My dreams may be shattered, I'll praise just the same. Omnipotent love is the whole of thy name, and I trust thee, I trust thee. For death has no victory, thy power endures. There's nothing, no nothing, thy love will not cure. I'm freed and invited to help break the curse across history, and I thank thee. For here I am trusting in so great a cause. Let the rocks and the rivers burst forth in applause. Let fallen creation all glory in God's loving kindness, endless mercy. I'll rise from the depths and I'll shake off my shame. My dreams may be shattered,
So that was totally awesome.
Thank you, Gunnar.
Loved it. Loved it. I love hearing your music. I'm really glad to get another one in today.
Thank you so much.
So I guess that's about a wrap for another episode of Still Learning. I hope you've enjoyed learning with us. And there's so much to know. There's so many layers to the gospel of Jesus Christ. We're grateful to be members. We're grateful to have the opportunity of learning. And remember, we're still learning, just like you. We'll see you next week.
We're still learning, line upon line, slowly gaining a heart divine. We've still got